Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today I was watching YouTube on my lunch break and I saw a video that was posted called the palette tag. I guess that's it. Palette tag challenge. Another one of those is coming around again, all centered around eyeshadow palettes. And I thought it was really fun and I really enjoyed watching her video. I'll link everything down below because it takes you through someone's like favorite palette, most used palette, most colorful, like most overhyped. There's a whole different list of categories. So I went ahead and laid my entire eyeshadow collection out on my floor, and it was kind of a lot. And then as I was thinking about it more and more, there probably are a couple that are like missing. Not very many, more so drugstore. Like I had a little L'Oreal like rose one that I would use a lot, or like there was one from like Coastal Flats I think I gave to my mom, so I didn't really use, just like things like that I kind of like, as I started like evolving with makeup, I didn't really use them as much. But I have a lot of different brands ranging from Jeffree Star Cosmetics, Anastasia Beverly Hills, Tarte, ColourPop, Urban Decay, Morphe, that's the one. Got a lot of Morphe palettes. So if you're interested in hearing about different palettes that I have and which ones are favorited, which ones are overhyped, and which ones are honestly really good for every day, keep on watching. Okay, so first up is newest palette. So newest to my collection is the Anastasia Beverly Hills and Carli Bybel palette. I don't think I've actually used this on camera yet. I barely used it in real life yet, but it's really pretty. It's got a lot of shimmers across the top and then some brighter, more like summery, springy shades. I remember when the Jackie Aina palette came out and this one came out soon after, and I was like, oh wow, like they're so contrasting. One's a little more like deeper tones, one's more brighter, like oh, they're both so pretty, what do I do? So I got both. But I had a lot of fun when I did a look with this, just kind of playing around or whatever, that used more of like the mauve tones. And then I did this like mauve shade, and then I did these like bright shimmery shades. Some of them are a little, like kind of close, like do you really need both? But I didn't make the palette, somebody else did. But it's like I said, it's newest to my collection, so I haven't really used it that much. But Anastasia has like the best shimmer formulas, in my opinion. Like best is a strong word, but like they just go on so intense and buttery and just like liquid. It's just, they're so nice. So yeah, that's my newest palette. All right. So next up is oldest palette, and this actually threw me for a loop for a little bit because in my mind, my oldest palette is the Morphe 35M. I remember ordering like some brushes and this palette from Morphe and like laying it out on my couch and taking a picture and putting it on Instagram and being like, oh my god, this is so amazing, I have this fancy palette. And in my mind, that was like my first palette. So like when it got to a point where I didn't use this palette anymore, I couldn't get rid of it as my first palette. But then I went and checked the receipts. And it turns out that, shocker, a Morphe palette, the 35P was actually my first palette, because I really love purple. Apparently not an eyeshadow though, that I learned. So this is like my first like big girl purchase. I of course had like other drugstore like little quads or whatever that I was using before, but this was the one that really like these were the two, I guess is what I should say, that really started like intermediate to advanced eyeshadow for me, just more so because of the color range. Like I was really experimenting with like blending and getting different eye looks instead of just like, when you get like most drugstore palettes, like, a couple years ago, like this is like 2016, I purchased these. They don't have a whole lot of range, so I wanted a big palette, and this was it. And like Morphe was like really blowing up and was like kind of the shit then, and I guess still now, not I guess, but they are still now. But it was like, to me, it was like, oh, that's a new thing and I can afford it. So yeah, so those are my oldest palettes, and I do not use them anymore. I don't think I've used them in like a year or two, like a solid year. Like I don't think I've touched them. At this point, like there's a lot of similarity here. Like, hello. I just don't reach for them. I think their newer palettes have gotten better. Like when they changed the packaging from like, this is like the old logo with the red M to the more like sleeker packaging. I think I've noticed like a bit of an improvement in their shadows, but I don't use these anymore, but I can't put them out because they're my first palette. So the next tag is the most expensive palette. And this was actually kind of hard for me because I almost never pay full price for makeup. I either wait until Sephora has a sale or Ulta has a 20% off coupon or the brand has a sale, or like that's just how I grew up. Like if it wasn't on sale, we didn't buy. Like I didn't know you could buy things full price until I got older, and I got lazy. So I went ahead and looked up which palette that I owned that was the highest like MSRP. Is that just for cars? Anyway, like the highest like price, and then I tried to figure out like what I paid for it, and it kind of still came down to the same two palettes. And they are the Huda Beauty. This is the nude palette, and this is the rose gold remastered. They're the same price point. They are both $65. I know for a fact that the rose gold remastered was on like special sale at Sephora. Like the palette was discounted so much, and then I think Sephora was doing like their 15% off at the time or something to that extent, where it was like double discount. And I remember because my mom was visiting me for the weekend, who like, bless her soul, just is not into makeup. Like she appreciates it because I'm into it and she's like, you know, #1 fan and all that jazz, but like she don't care. Like we were like, I was like obsessively looking at like swatches and deciding between the rose gold remastered and like the purple one, the desert dusk or something like that. And then her and I like walked over to the Sephora and like picked it out. They were pricey. Like that's why I had never gotten them, because like they were $65 though. But yeah, so two most expensive palettes, same brand, same price. I'm counting it as one. What are you gonna do? All right, so the next item is the most affordable palette. And this was kind of hard for me to do because I didn't want to like, I tried to like not double dip. Like I tried to like, if I used a palette or a category, I tried to like not use it again, I guess, to an extent. Like I didn't allow that. I'm very OCD about these things. Like these answers have been thought out, like peer reviewed, published in a journal. These are the final thoughts. But I ended up going with ColourPop eyeshadows. So this isn't a palette. This is a, like, they're singles that I made. And this is where it still counts because I do have their main squeeze eyeshadow palette. I really want to say that I had more of their eyeshadows, but for the love of God, I can't remember where or why or how or what. Oh, the Super Shocks. I have some of the Super Shock shadows. That's why I know I have more of ColourPop. Anywho, so this is the most affordable palette. ColourPop is definitely known across the board, like all the different types of categories of products, for being like affordable and budget friendly. They're now in Ulta. Before, when it was on their website, I was kind of like, okay, it's budget friendly, but you have to pay for shipping. I don't have a lot of their palettes except for this one, which did wear really well. I remember when I got it, I was so surprised by the size. But I got it and like my neighbors had invited us to like a come hang out on the balcony, like a barbecue or in a condo or whatever. And I wanted to try this palette out and I didn't realize how bright it was. So like I showed up like, hi neighbors, with like, whoo, watermelon lids. But I do really enjoy the singles. I had picked out a couple shades to put in this little like Z palette. But I think I like them, I don't want to say better, but I use these more because they're not like crazy wild colors. Okay, so the next category is one of the 3 categories that gave me the most trouble. Like a couple of them were like bam, 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 bam. Like I know exactly what I want, and that's why I wanted to like get this video filmed, just because like this makes sense, and this was really fun for me to watch like someone else like understand like what their favorites were and what things they liked and didn't like or whatever, and then for me to be like, how dare you not like that, I love that. Some of these things made sense right away, but this category, everyday palette, really tripped me up because I haven't been wearing eyeshadow in a very long time. Just life or whatever, like I've just kind of been trying more new palettes than I've had like a daily one. So I technically have 3, but I want to talk about one later, so I'm talking about 2 today. But the first one is like an everyday palette, is what I talked about in my last video, which is the Tarte Tartelette in Bloom. So we've seen this palette before. It's very neutral and easy and very like, if someone was like just getting into makeup or like not sure what their skill set, it's like, okay, like this is a perfect gift palette for you. It's got very light, blendable shades. Like, you know, it's high quality because it's like Sephora or high end or whatever they call it. And it's easy every day. Like, this used to be my travel palette. I remember taking this on several conferences, and to the point where like I went to one conference and myself and like my co-presenter, she came to my room to like rehearse or something. And she's like, oh my God, this is the palette I brought too. And we were like talking about it. So kind of cool. I think it's a very big staple. A couple of my friends had this palette we talked about a little bit. And then, okay, so the second one that I feel like you're going to look at and say, that's not every day. And I hear you, but let me plead my case. So this is the Tarte Young, Wild, and Cruelty Free palette. And yes, okay, it's got color in it, but color is okay. So the reason why I'm including this in everyday palette is because I wanted to get rid of this palette so bad. I was obsessed with it for the longest time, and every time I go in Ulta, I would just walk by it and want to swatch it, and I take my boyfriend and I go like, oh, don't you see how buttery they are? And he'd be like, oh yeah, babe. I really, really loved it. And then at one point, again, I buy everything on sale. Ulta had some like flash sale and it was like 40% off or something like outrageous. And so I bought it. And then when I got it, I was like, oh, you know what? Like, this isn't actually like what I thought it would be. Like, I felt much more constricted in the looks that I could create. So like I found like an orange look here, you find like a purple look here, and obviously you have the green and blue here, and then you have like a gold moment, right? Or like a pink, right? And then I was like, oh, that's it. Like, for me, like, I build my look based on the mattes, and then I pick a shimmer to kind of go on top. So like, to have fewer mattes, I felt restricted, and I was like, no, I don't like this. I'm just, no. And it's actually the first couple photos on my Instagram account are using this palette. And I would use it and the shadows would kind of like blend into each other. And I'd be like, what the heck is this? Like, I wanted to see the other colors or whatever. But then every damn time I did a look, it came out so well. Don't come for me if you don't like my makeup today. This isn't the point. The point is that I would throw together a couple shades with a shimmer, and like, because the shadows blended into each other, it just morphed into this like effortless look. You could use a different palette and spend a lot of time picking out colors and blending very precisely. And then like, there's your other friend who like whips it together in 5 minutes, and then you all go out to the bar and no one can fucking see all the work you put in, because it doesn't matter, because they're not that close, right? Like, it's like, this gets it done. It's not like the most precise, but it could be. But like, my point is like, I feel like you're not believing me, and this is what I'm upset with. It throws together a look that you'd think would take you more time. And it just kept doing that. Like, each one I did, I was like, I'd be like, oh, I hate this eyeshadow palette. And I'd be like with people and they'd be like, your eyeshadow looks amazing. Like, what do you, like, that looks like really good and put together. And I'm like, all right, fine. So, hear me out. It's a good everyday palette. The next category on the palette tag challenge is most colorful palette. And part of me was like, oh, the Jaclyn Hill Volume 2 palette, that's got a lot of color. Or like Riviera is supposed to be super colorful. This is not my choice. This is build up, right? Like, that's got a lot of colors. As soon as I opened it, I was like, nah, this is the most colorful thing I own. It's the Jawbreaker palette by Jeffree Star. But this is a lot of colors, guys. Like, this is the most colorful. This is like some Willy Wonka moment. It's some Willy Wonka ass shit. Like, that's what I was going to say. And that's what I just need to say. Like, this is a lot. You can argue that you can use like these two colors to create a neutral look, but then why did you pick up this palette? I've not gotten a ton of use out of this because you can't. You can't just like not think about it and do it, you know, for work or whatever, which is when I would mainly do eyeshadow before, you know, we all got quarantined. But I have created some really fun looks with this. And it's just so much fun just to play with color and like get the pastel vibes. I'd be really interested if he did this same palette, but instead of having more like pastel colors, to have more like almost like neon or like bright, like I think BH Cosmetic has like a Take Me to Brazil palette, which is like true bold colors, which some of these are, but like a lot of the looks that I've seen were more like pastel. So yeah, this is the most colorful palette in my collection, kind of hands down, because Riviera has bright colors, but this is the most colorful. Quality wise, Jeffree Star's eyeshadows are like, they're up there. Like, they are a bar to which I measure measure other eyeshadows. There are some colors in this palette because it is colorful that were like not as like ideal, but like for colors, they are still pretty good. All right, so next up on the palette tag challenge, I think that's what it's called. I'm just gonna keep calling it that, is smallest palette. And I think a lot of people were talking about the e.l.f. eyeshadows, which were like this big. And so for my collection, a lot of my palettes are larger. I don't really enjoy smaller palettes, so I don't really like this category because I kind of already had to talk about it, but it's the main squeeze palette because like, just like, that's so small. All right, I don't think you understand. So this is the Poke palette, Winky Lux. My friend got me this for Christmas. It was actually super cute. He like knows that I like makeup and like this is like an anime person, or I'm sorry, like an influencer. I don't really know who she is, that like he liked, and he was like, oh, she has a makeup palette, make up that for Susie. It was super cute. So this is like a normal one, and then this is like the ColourPop one. So like by itself, you're like, oh, that's not that small, and then you put it next to like something else, and it's like, that's so teeny weeny, which like this could probably qualify for smallest palette too. Again, very OCD. All right, so the next one was biggest palette. And I soon realized that so many of my palettes are like the same size, like Morphe ones are like 35 pans or whatever. So that's like the bigger ones that I have. But I did want to use this tag as an opportunity to talk about this mammoth. So this is a Morphe palette, just comparison to how big this thing is. And I didn't really count this when I was like considering my palettes because it's like a Z palette. And it actually holds all of my Makeup Geek eyeshadows. And I kind of forget that I have this because I don't really use it that often. Just being, I guess because it's bigger, like I wanted one that could hold all of them, but then I ended up not using it as much. I think more so just I like kind of like gravitated away towards single pan eyeshadows and just kind of got more into like the idea of palettes and creating looks with what was in the palette. That's a huge thing for me. Like if I buy a palette, I want to be able to create a look with it. Like the idea of like having a palette you like to use and then having to go somewhere else and then have to bring that and another palette, like that bothers me. So I kind of got away from using these, but like these were my shit. Like those two Morphe palettes I talked about earlier, and like this was like my OG. Like I was obsessed with like having like all the shades that I like liked in Makeup Geek's original lineup of their single eyeshadows. And like in 2016 is when I kind of got really into makeup, like 2016, 2017. And back then, like Makeup Geek was like it. Like they're still a popular brand now, but like at the time, like MAC and Makeup Geek were the two brands that were like dominated the whole like single eyeshadow. And like I remember watching so many Jaclyn Hill videos and she wouldn't even bother being like Makeup Geek. The only one I hit pan in, Peach Smoothie, and then oh gosh, there was like Cocoa Bear, yeah. There was Cocoa Bear. There was a couple like that. Like I remember being so annoyed because I really wanted like this one like color she used, and all she listed was like Peach Smoothie, Cocoa Bear, and I'm like, okay, but like give me some more to go off of. So this is like the biggest physical palette that I own, but it's not like an eyeshadow palette. So do what you want with that. And this is actually by Adept Cosmetics. I think there might be a couple other like brands that make really big ones, but when I was looking for it, this was one of the more like the giantest one, I guess. That wasn't like a Z palette because like Z palettes are more expensive than this thing was. All right, so the next category is best memory palette, which I interpreted to be a palette that you associate like a very fond, happy memory with, like if you were to conjure your Patronus or whatever. And there were a couple that I thought of like that were gifts and whatnot, but the one that had to win was the Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson collaboration of the Conspiracy palette. So the color story is pretty unique. It's not why I have it as the best memory palette. So when this came out, it was part of a YouTube series where Shane Dawson wanted to kind of expose the inner workings behind the scenes and all the cables and wires on how a product goes from like an idea in someone's head to an actual palette that someone owns. So there's this whole like series of him filming Jeffree Star and the whole content creation and how brand deals go down, like this, like literally the whole process on like how to design and manufacture and sell makeup. So that was really fun. So like me and my friends would like hang out and watch it. We had like a group chat, we would talk about it. But the day that the palette launched was the same day that a conference that my friends and I go to was also selling their tickets. And like this conference sells out in 2 seconds. not like 2 seconds, like, oh my God, no, 2.5 seconds. So that was at noon, and then the palette was at 1 Eastern time. So like I'm already like super jittery and like just time and pressure and just how do I even click anymore? So the ticket thing happened at noon, and like that was super crazy. And then we were all like talking to each other, like who got tickets, who didn't get tickets, who's still in line. Like that was a whole thing. And then before I know it, I didn't even get lunch, and like the conspiracy palette was launching. And for those of you who were right along with me, you'll remember that the website just crapped itself. It was broken, but still trying to walk. So the page would just like not load, or like it would load half the way and you could add some things to your cart. Or like you'd be able to like add one thing but not another, and like but then you couldn't get the checkout. Like it was this whole thing. But the products were selling out, and this is what I was just freaking out about. And like I was also very mad because my brothers used up all the data on my family plan, and I don't have Wi-Fi at work. So like my phone also wasn't working as like another way to like check like while I like did other things or whatever. So me and this one girl were starting to become really good friends, and we were like watching the whole series together. And I was like, have you been able to get the website to work? Like, did you get anything? She's like, no. And I literally like, and she's a coworker too. So I literally like ran to her office, pulled her out of whatever like probably work-related meeting that she was in, and we like ran to my car and physically drove to the mall to get the palette. So like just this whole idea of like I should be at work right now, but I'm at a mall buying an eyeshadow palette. Like it was just hilarious. Like we were like speed walking through the mall, showed up at the store, and like turns out they had started selling things at 10 a.m. when the store opened, opposed to like 1 o'clock when it was like on the website for everyone else. So like they were like out of like so many things. But we just showed up, and I was buying palettes for myself, lip gloss for myself, and then I doubled that same order for my friend who was still trying to get the website to work. So I had like the full conspiracy palette, I had the mini controversy, and I think I had like a lip gloss. I think it's the only 3 things I was able to get. And this is the mini controversy if you're curious. And so my friend who was with me, she was like trying to decide what she wanted to get, but like there was people like reaching around us and like grabbing them. And there was like, this is the last box. There are 4 here. When these 4 are gone, there are no more. So she just like went on like autopilot and just copied my exact order, even though I was like duplicating it to give to someone else. So she ended up with like 4 palettes and 2 lip glosses, and like she kept some from her own, and like I don't know if she ever returned them or like sold them or like gave them to somebody or whatever, but like I just found that kind of funny. Not that like she bought so much, but that like we both just like uprooted from work, drove to the mall, bought like $400 of eyeshadow. We came back to work, and all the guys in our department are like, what do you got there? And we're like, eyeshadow. And like we tried to like explain to them, and they're like, Jeffrey, what? And I'm like, we don't have time. I need to go get a cup of coffee. It's just like the best memory for me. Like whenever I look at it, it's like I remember that whole ordeal. And it just makes me happy. All right, so the next category is worth the hype. And for me, this is the ABH and Jackie Aina palette. So I've actually done a video on this. I'll link that down below. But the color story is just really pretty. And it's really inclusive, which is something she really talks about on her channel. And like, I feel like you can really see the person in this palette. Like this is like just her personality. If you haven't seen her videos, she's so funny. Every time she opens one of her videos, she like sings her own name and like dances. So she's like, Jackie, 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 Jackie. And I was just really surprised by like the overall shadow quality. Like it wasn't just like the brand and like she picked out colors. Like the formula seems to be like really good in this palette. And I've heard other people say that as well. It's like easy to make looks with. Like there's something really crazy in here, but also like there's the essentials are still here. I really enjoy it. I think it's actually on sale right now, so you should maybe go pick that up. All right, so contrasting to that, something that's not worth the hype. So for me, in my collection, that was the Kylie Jenner Sipping Pretty palette. And it's a pretty palette, like there's nothing wrong with it. I got it because, again, Ulta put it on sale. And the color story just really appealed to me. I thought it was really pretty, and I was kind of curious to try like Kylie eyeshadow, or gosh, I don't know what the brand is. So I got this, especially like there was a lot of browns in it, right? Like it was just like kind of like neutral-ish, and I was like, this looks nice. I have a problem. It looked pretty. I wanted to buy it. And I know there is a lot of hype surrounding Kylie Jenner and her brand. So I thought this was a really good one for not worth the hype, because I feel like this palette was, I think, $65. And it doesn't not work. but it's not $65 good. I feel like this is one that definitely sold on the name, and not super the quality. Like I think I used, it's like the purple glittery shade, Sex on the Beach. Well, that's not awkward or anything. It was just a mess. Like the normal browns and shimmers, they work fine. And then as soon as you get to the more like intricate colors, it's like, nah. So I've got it and I did use it. This is what I actually would reach for a lot when I was like wearing makeup for work. I would just kind of grab anything in this like top range here and just kind of combo that for a look. And it worked out like decently, but again, like I wasn't really like doing a whole lot with it. Like it was not worth $65. Like I'm just gonna keep talking about that. Also, I will address this weird tape thing. So this has glitter, right? Like this whole logo is like glitter, but not like a nice glossed over glitter. It's like sprinkled like arts and crafts middle school glitter. So me being my father's daughter took a strip of clear tape and just pressed it very evenly. I still wanted to have the logo there, but I was not about having that glitter get everywhere. So I just kind of pressed that to keep it down. We have 2 categories left, and these were the other 2 that gave me the most trouble in trying to think of palettes. So the next one is favorite palette from favorite brand. And I don't know that I have a favorite brand. Like I have brands that I trust more, but looking through my collection, I had mostly ABH palettes. And I'm not upset about this choice whatsoever. Just like, I didn't like force a brand because this is a palette that I think a lot of people like. Like, I don't think it, I know it. It is the Modern Renaissance palette. So you've probably seen this before. And one of the reasons why I choose this as my favorite palette from my favorite brand is because I keep going back to this. Like, this is a palette that I could say like, oh, if you're like getting into makeup and like you kind of want to go more advanced, like the Tarte Bloom, you can get this one because it has cool tones and it has warm tones. And that's my biggest thing. Like when I stopped using the Tarte Bloom as my travel palette, I started using this one because I wanted the availability, or I wanted the flexibility to be able to create that warm or that cool. Like I wanted to be able to do whatever like matched my like outfit. And I like this a lot for like traveling because like I go to a lot of conferences, because during the day I would just do like the mattes, and then all I would do for like going out in the evenings would be to like pat a shimmer on top. It's just like an oldie but a goodie. Okay, so the last palette in this challenge is the most used palette, and this is like another category I really struggled with because depending on how long I owned something or how much I liked it, I really wanted to stick to the one that I used the most. And I think you can tell from the thumbprints that that is my Jaclyn Hill Volume 1 palette. And I really love this palette. Jaclyn was one of the first YouTube videos that I ever watched, and the color story was like perfect. It had all these different like basic browns, but a little pop of color. And it really helped me kind of branch out and experiment with like creating eye looks. And there were so many tutorials about how to use this palette, and like she did so many tutorials using her own palette that I would just use all the time and just like really kind of like learn how to play with colors and looks. And like it was just, I'm rambling, but this is my most used palette. My eyelashes are really trying me. They're coming off the inner corner because I keep yawning so much. If anyone's figured out how to get them to stick to your inner corner, please let me know. So that wraps up this video. Thanks for hanging out with me. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.